Hey, everybody. We're the Menschwarmers, your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. And we are right in the middle of Jocktober. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very good. Happy Jocktober to you too. I know that most of the high holidays are done. The last thing we filmed was Simchas Torah, but it feels like the Jock Peterson October home run train. There fittingly could be a Jock Peterson Yontif somewhere involved
right.
in a September October time.
The Jewish calendar is full of holidays, but we really have nothing between Simchat Torah and Hanukkah. So maybe Jocktoberfest is the holiday that we all need. We are referring, of course, to Jock Peterson, the excuse me, I have a bit of a cold if people can't hear that. But we're referring, of course, to Jock Peterson, the Atlanta Braves outfielder who has
the self-proclaimed bad bitch of the Atlanta Braves.
So that's the second thing to talk about. The first thing is just that in the ALDS against the Brewers, he hit 2 home runs.
NLDS.
Sorry, NLDS against the Brewers, he hit 2 home runs, including a 3-run shot yesterday. He's hitting 429, having a great postseason as he has many times.
And at the same time, he has decided, I think, to dress like his own booby.
Yeah. So for some reason, unknown to anyone really, a few weeks ago, he started wearing a string of pearls around his neck, and not like a necklace with one pearl or something like that, but like a pearl necklace,
sort of costume jewelry thing.
Yeah, I can only assume they're real pearls, but what do I know? Maybe they're not. Certainly the first type of that bling that we've seen anyone wear. And someone apparently asked him during a post-game scrum what the story behind the string of pearls was, and he responded, he's just a bad bitch, and that's why he's wearing them. So I don't know, man. This is great. I buy it. Shout out to I guess friendish of the pod, Evelyn Frick at Alma, who reported on it, because I think that was just like a great story. So
I think she's a friend of the pod.
Yeah, she's liked our tweets, and we've interviewed her coworkers.
And Alma's another organization in the struggle for more Jewish media covering itself.
Yeah, I think they have a very similar MO to ours, which is, did you know so-and-so is Jewish? And occasionally they write about sports. So, we talked before about playoff baseball, Rowdy Tellez out.
It's a shame, but Bregman lives on.
Bregman lives on. Giants led by Gabe Kapler.
By the time this comes out, it might, Gabe Kapler may or may not have been eliminated. Close personal friend of our last guest, Josh Rawich, Gabe Kapler, may have been eliminated. My namesake. When I was growing up, there were not a lot of famous, notable people with the name Gabe. At the time, Jewish major leaguer Gabe Kapler was one of them. Mick Jagger's son, who was close in age to me, is also named Gabriel. But that was more or less it growing up.
Well, good segue into similar named people, because my last name is Hirsch, a fairly common Jewish last name. Most Hirsches.
I want to pause here. James' last name is Hirsch. I know 3 Jewish families named Hirsch who all spell their name differently, but pronounce it the same.
Oh yeah, it's my name is commonly misspelled. They often add a C or spell it with an E. It's all an anglicization of some Germanic or Yiddish last name. So any spelling I think I'm okay with. But most Hirsches are Jewish. I think especially last named Hirsches. There's certainly some first named Hirsches who are Jewish as well. But one notable athlete with a similar name who's not Jewish is Herschel Walker, the running back and Georgia star, who is currently running for the Atlanta Senate. And Gabe, you told me today about a pretty terrible thing that he's been involved with.
I'm also happy to talk about Herschel Walker in the context of, last week we discussed non-Jews named Mordecai.
Right.
And I feel like, we left out Moises Alou was a non-Jew named Moises.
Sure.
Herschel Walker is a non-Jew named Herschel. I think, whatever the opposite of a Mike Jacobs all-star is, I guess we could call him, a Michael Mordecai all-star, or if we're sticking with the Mike theme. But Herschel Walker is running for Senate in Georgia as I would say, not particular friends to the Jews, Donald Trump's preferred choice candidate.
Right.
And as you would expect, their campaign has become involved with some unsavory characters, one of who publishes under the logo of a swastika with vaccine tips at the end of it. So Herschel Walker is now choosing to identify with him. So if you live in Georgia, it's not great to see a professional athlete openly embrace that anti-Semitism, but we try not to get all political on this show. But if you live in Georgia, please do not vote for that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really they tried to downplay it
from this podcast to you. Just don't.
Yeah, so is it like a swastika-shaped image made of syringes? And I guess it was sort of suggesting that vaccine mandates are the Nazis here. But, at best, it was not an embrace of Nazism. It was just a complete, reduction of the horrendousness of Nazism by equating it with vaccine mandates. So, like, that's best case scenario for him. So not all Hirsches is the point I'm trying to make here.
But what I also don't understand, and maybe again this is getting a little too political, not all Hirsches, but all Jews, but hashtag all Jews. Maybe that's the right thing. I sometimes get lost with the anti-vaxxers if they think they're the Jews or they think they're the master race, where they have like better immune systems and better natural powers that they don't need to get the vaccine, yet they're the Jews for being forced to get the vaccine. That's the part I lose them on.
I think it's one of those situations where it's like, in the same way that people have caricatured Jews as both, the capitalist overlords and also the communist internationalist conspiracy. It's a big tent, but it's not necessarily the most ideologically consistent.
What is your preferred historical Jewish stereotype? Like, if you would like one of them to be true about you, which would you like it to be?
Well, I feel like good with money.
We're getting the money sign from our producer here of what he would like.
I mean, I do feel like good with money has more cachet these days than like when it was used as like a basis for blood libel in times when usury was, a punishable sin by the church. But that's definitely one of them. Yeah, if I were a rich man, sort of comes to mind as the best. Do you have one as a stereotype that you actually think is a good one and something you embrace?
I think it'd be pretty fucking cool to be some sort of horrible lizard monster under my skin suit.
I see.
I think I would like to be some sort of alien freak that has made my way through North America, living comfortably as a human, but actually am one sort of, interstellar ageless monster. I have a friend who is a prominent, I would say, well, she's a journalist at a very prominent global newspaper, who once said in a wedding I was at, I think her and I were the only Jewish people at the wedding. She opened her speech with, "Hello, I am the Jewish friend. I even shaved my horns for all you people tonight." And there were like 3 people that laughed. I was one of them, but I would love for that to have been true. You would like a set of horns that you could bust out? I think that'd be a set of horns would be like a little part of it. Like maybe if they were like the little AC/DC horns they give out at concerts, but I think I'd prefer to be like a full-on reptilian. Interesting.
I don't know if this is I guess not a stereotype per se, but I guess if the golem was real, if we just had like a clay Batman to call on occasion to settle disputes, that would be to settle disputes and protect Jews. That would be cool. I guess that's more of a mythology than a stereotype.
A very good one, similar to how we call New York Met Kevin Pillar the Dybbuk, because he steals hits in the outfield like the Dybbuk would steal souls. So it's true.
Someone needs the golem as their nickname. We need I feel like a Jewish goalie could be a golem. That would be a good play on words.
We could reach out to Corey Hirsch. Speaking of Hirsches, former NHL goalie and Jewish and other Herschel Walker sound alike. Corey Hirsch, to see if he was ever called the Golem.
The Golem is, I think it's a good one, but I thought Corey Hirsch isn't Jewish. Didn't we look into this at some point? Anyways, I think he's not. I think he's just like one of those prairie guys with a Germanic last name.
Yeah, he'd be a very good Mike Jacobs All-Star. He is from Medicine Hat.
Yeah, exactly. So no Jews, right. No Jews in Medicine Hat.
Well, we could call
or you know what, Ralph Ben Murgy, if you're listening, let us know if there's any Jews in Medicine Hat, and please interview them. That does give us a good lead into Believe it or not, it's mid-October, and somehow that means that hockey's back. It feels like hockey just went away. Gabe, I'm going to say you're our resident hockey expert because there's only two of us here, and I don't know hockey very well at all. But we should talk a little bit about Jewish players in the NHL and who we should be looking out for this year.
So obviously, we're going to be paying a lot of attention to both of our close personal friend Zach Hyman, who is starting his career in the Edmonton Oilers with playing with Connor McDavid, obviously.
Right.
But also we have to look at sort of emerging superstar and almost certainly two future American Olympians. The NHL players are going to be back at the Olympics in this coming February. In Tokyo. In Beijing, and we've got two Jewish defensemen on Team USA in reigning Norris Trophy winner Aaron Fox and in Vancouver Canuck Quinn Hughes. Adam Fox. I apologize, Adam Fox. Quinn Hughes. So who we can both get very excited about, claiming to be Jewish. There often aren't going to be two Jewish players on the same Olympic team in any hockey sport. I think they might be the first Jewish teammates on Team USA ever. And especially if any of Quinn's brothers also make the team. So we'll be following them closely. That is Adam Fox of the New York Rangers, Long Island boy, may or may not have a New York Rangers themed bar mitzvah, but I am the secreting that into existence. We'll have to ask our friend Emily to look into it, as well as, Vancouver transplant Quinn Hughes.
Right. So Adam Fox won the Norris Trophy last year for being that's the best defenseman, or is that the best offensive defenseman or best defenseman?
Though now that's a big debate. That is the best defenseman, but often it sort of goes into the best defenseman. Best offensive defenseman. It is traditionally the best, but it often goes into the best. It winds up being the best offensive one.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Similarly, we've got a third American defenseman, Jacob Chitrin of the Phoenix Coyotes, who is also Jewish and American. So, he could even make the team as well, and there could be three.
Oh, interesting. I think, I guess we'll have to look into this, but I think the last Jewish player to play for the U.S. men's Olympic team is Matthew Schneider. I know he was in Nagano. I don't know if he would have been in the next one. It might have been a little too late in his career to make it to Salt Lake.
I'm not sure if there has been one ever since. I think a lot of people have thought Scott Niedermayer was Jewish, the Canadian, but he was definitely not. But Matthew Schneider would be a great one. I don't think Michael Camilleri ever played on an Olympic team. So
he's Canadian. He's Canadian, Camilleri.
He's Canadian, but he is also Jewish. So
sure. I just mean on the Canadian team. On the American team. That's something we should look into and probably take a more close look at in advance of the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. I guess the NHL players are going to play in the Olympics now, right?
Yes, they are going to the Olympics this year.
Right. Or in 2022, right?
So there's also a couple of Mike Jacobs All-Stars entering the league this year, or that we were talking about at the start. I'm going to name them for you, and I don't want you to tell me if they're Jewish, because they're not, but I'd like you to tell me what country you think they're from.
Okay.
So the first one, Mike Jacobs All-Star, a defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche, Bowen Byram.
Bowen Byram?
Yes.
I'm going to guess American.
Bowen Byram is Canadian. That's close, but not fully there. Eric Chernick.
Eric Chernick?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like Sweden.
Eric Chernick is Slovakian.
Oh, Slovakian.
But it's got that C with like the thing in it. So maybe it's Cernik.
Okay.
And then lastly, my personal favorite, Moritz Seder.
Moritz Seder?
Yeah, Moritz Seder, which
I'm going to guess
sounds like the name of a family event.
I'm going to go Swiss. Is he Swiss?
Very close. He is from Zell, Germany, which I believe is sort of in the Swiss area of Germany. But we're going to be following Moritz Seder extremely closely throughout his entire career.
That is very cool. Well, we should welcome to the league the new expansion team, the Seattle Kraken. who I know lost last night to my beloved Vegas Golden Knights.
And that means another Jewish owner into the fraternity of.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there any Jewish connection between with the Kraken?
Yes, one of their owners is I guess sort of one of the sort of people that anti-Semites rule the world. Movie producer Jerry Bruckheimer.
Oh, of course, sure. Pirates of the Caribbean and all that.
Exactly. He is a part of, I guess, a group called the Seattle Hockey Partners. There's a number of them. Okay. One of them, the Lewicki family, who used to run the Blue Jays. Todd Lewicki. I don't believe the Lewickis are Jewish, but Jerry Bruckheimer is Jewish, as well as David Bonderman, who
he's one of the owners of the Celtics too. I think
he owns the Celtics.
Finance guy. He's Jewish.
Exactly. As well as Adrian Hanauer, who owns the Seattle Sounders, who is actually the good pillow billionaire. He owns sort of like a rival custom-made pillow company. And is sort of a good pillow billionaire compared to the other notable pillow billionaires. One other thing, I think there's a Jewish connection with the Seattle Kraken, which is that their logo is sort of a mythical, all-consuming giant squid, which is another stereotype I think Jewish people have been believed to be.
That's the one they chose. Yeah,
that's the one they chose, exactly. So if you give it up to Jerry Bruckheimer and Adrian Hanauer and ask them the same question, they're going to go with the giant squid with its tentacles inside all of the world.
And also one of their future stars, I guess, an alternate captain is Mike Jacobs All-Star Jaden Schwartz, who we've definitely gotten questions about, but is not Jewish, is from Saskatchewan. And is just one of those prairie guys with a Germanic Jewish sounding last name. So good luck to the Kraken, I guess. Will be hard for them to replicate Vegas's early success as an expansion team, but they'll try. We should move on now to our interview with Peri Goodman. Peri's a recent graduate of Brock University, and she was part of the Brock squad that captured gold at the international cheer competition that she attended last year. So it was really interesting to have Peri with us, talk about cheerleading a bit.
I didn't know much about gymnastics at all. Gymnastics, sorry, I should say, or cheer. Peri talks a lot in our interview about both gymnastics and cheer, and sort of her career, some of the injuries she's had, some of the stuff she's overcome in order to compete at a very high global level, as well as some of the exciting futures of the gymnastics world, some of the exciting things that are happening to the sport, and her role as a Jewish athlete in that.
Yeah, interesting to hear her talk about visiting Poland and Auschwitz with their team. And off the record, she told us that there's a little bit of animosity between gymnasts and cheerleaders, in terms of looking down on each other and a bit of a friendly rivalry between the sports. That was interesting to hear as well.
I think it's those sort of the things where the two of them look at each other and they're like, I wouldn't be caught dead in that one. It's like, you ever hear the joke about the guy in the desert island with the two synagogues? It's the guy in the desert island with the cheer squad and the gymnastics squad.
Right. That one I wouldn't be
join and one for me to never go into.
Yeah. But before we get to our interview, we should mention that if you want to support the Canadian Jewish News, our fine producers and distributors, then join the CJN Circle. It's their new sort of subscription model. You get quarterly magazines in print, invitations to events.
You get not just us in our ear holes, but our words in your eyeballs if you were to read that print magazine from the CJN Circle.
That's right. Although I should tell you, Gabe, I should have mentioned this before. I've been asked by a close family member to stop using the term ear holes. They don't enjoy it. So that's the feedback I'm getting from my.
Am I allowed to
family.
still say ear holes?
I guess you can still say it. Although now that we've been discussing it, I've said it so many more times than I otherwise would have. But yeah, join the CJN Circle. Invitations to events that'll include live events very shortly, and a weekly printable edition of the CJN. You can learn more at thecjn.ca/circle.
Interestingly, circles are one of the shapes that gymnasts and cheerleaders seem to, join around in. So we'll use that as a wonderful Venn diagram, more circles, to throw to our interview with Canadian athlete Peri Goodman. Hi, we're here with Peri Goodman, recently graduated from the Brock Badgers from the cheer squad. Peri, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Peri, can you tell our audience a little bit about what your role was with the Brock cheer squad and how you got involved in cheer?
So I was a flyer for 4 years of university, 3 if you don't count the COVID year.
Is flyer the one who does the flips?
Yeah, the flyer is the one who gets launched in the air. And if you stack more than 2 people high, if you stack 3, a flyer can be in that middle tier or at the top.
So, okay, this is first quick question before we get into your background. Real quick, what is the largest human pyramid you've been in? How many people?
Like how many people tall or how many people it takes to put it up?
Either or.
All right. So usually you max out at 2.5 stacked people tall. So our third level will actually start at the hip level of our second person. And they take around 10 people to put up safely. And that's just to make sure that you have a group to throw up the top person and to catch them safely when they come down. So 10 people.
Cool. I don't know. That's okay. So we're looking at 10 people here.
Yeah. Sometimes you can actually join them together and you can get a whole team. So my team is 20 and we'll actually stack everyone together like little toy soldier army men. But according to
the feels rules, almost 10, like something that would be in Squid Game.
Kinda.
That's a topical humor for you. So, welcome to the show. Obviously, you're here, so you are Jewish. I would assume somewhat proudly.
Very proudly.
It appears there's some Judaica behind you in the room.
Yeah, I figured if I'm going on benchwarmers, this is the appropriate time to have Judaica behind me.
Is that a bat mitzvah certificate of some sort?
No, one of them is my parents' ketubah, and one
great.
is a Baruch Habayit behind me.
Yeah, nice. My ketubah is somewhere in this room, but I'm not quite sure. I
don't even know where mine is.
Yikes!
That's
Hashem does, so that's what matters.
So Peri, how did you get into competitive cheer?
I didn't really feel like I didn't want to join until university. And that's just because there's no gymnastics in Canada once you're in new sports. And a friend of mine had actually told me if I wanted to come to a summer combine or a summer home camp to try out being a flyer, that I should join because they had a lot of graduates graduating on from the program. And that just with my height and my experience in gymnastics, I was likely to be a good fit. So I walked on in my sophomore year.
So we take it you did gymnastics as a kid and growing up and into high school as well?
Yeah, that was the path I took.
And cheer, I guess, has its, obviously its basis in traditional cheerleading and stuff like that, but it's taken on a different context, it seems, in the modern era in terms of what it is. Like, sort of, can you just walk us through a little bit, like what's involved in a modern cheer competition?
All right. So in the collegiate and national team league, which is what I was in, you have 2.5 minutes to build as many structures with people as you can. And you get scored on how clean you can do it and how many people can do it at the same time on your team. So there's an incentive to break into smaller groups and has less people lifting your flyer at a time. And so the basis in the sport now is actually more in like Olympic style weightlifting than it is in gymnastics. And that's to separate it from gymnastics when it becomes an Olympic sport in the next decade. Then you have your cheering section.
And is that, when you say when it becomes an Olympic sport, is that like manifesting, or is that a thing that has been decided upon that is like in the motion?
I'm really proud of this. It's going to be an Olympic sport as soon as a country that's hosting declares it has enough public interest. So likely it's going to be Los Angeles in 2028.
Wow.
And I say I'm proud because when my team competed in Poland, which I'm sure we'll talk about after, that was one of the tournaments that the IOC looked at to determine whether or not it's going to be an Olympic sport.
Oh, that's amazing. And
so the squad is typically a 20 person squad.
If you're competing on an all-girl team, it's 20. And if you're competing co-ed, it'll be 16.
And 16 split between men and women, or there's some sort of different mix?
Well, it's depending on which league you're in, it's split with different numbers of men that you're allowing on the team. But co-ed teams can usually have up to, I think it can be pretty even split. I've never competed co-ed, so I'm the wrong person to ask about that. But like collegiate cheerleading in the States, and think of like sidelines, it's pretty split men and women.
Okay.
So you currently are in, I guess, the Niagara region. For our American listeners, it's where close to Niagara Falls, and I guess European listeners, we've got, a minion of them or so. Where did you grow up? How did you find yourself there? Our producer, Michael, is a proud Niagaran. I think that's the term, but as you said, you were doing gymnastics growing up, I assume at somewhat of a high level, if you were looking at a university level program, and then you found yourself in cheer. So let's start, longer ago, sort of your athletic beginnings. Where and when was that?
So that was in Richmond Hill. I grew up a little bit north of Toronto, and The athletic background that took me to Niagara was just that I still wanted to compete in gymnastics when I was in university. And so I was looking at schools that were close to clubs that I had relationships with. And so it came down to me between McMaster and Brock, because that horseshoe stretch is really good with athletic programs.
Okay.
And when I had gotten into McMaster, because I was deciding between the two for art programs, just the balance between school and sport wasn't really common in McMaster, and it would be harder with my program being as time consuming as it is. But at Brock, they have such a strong athletic culture with athletes from all different types of programs. So I knew that if I was going to go there, I would still be celebrated with whatever sport that I wanted to do, whether it was part of the Brock Badgers or independently competing in a club circuit.
And what sort of format do the competitions take between the universities in Canada?
For cheerleading?
Yeah, for cheerleading.
So currently it's independent from U Sports and not part of OUA for us. So we compete under like individual producers for tournaments. But when the Brock Badgers, like when we compete overseas and we compete in the States, it's under varsity and UCA, which is just like the umbrella for cheerleading in the States. And
you mentioned your trip to Poland. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you were involved, what was going on there?
For sure. So in 2018, the Brock Badgers got to compete representing U Sports, like an all U Sport team in Poland at the first FISU Cheerleading World Championships, which is under the umbrella of like the Universiad competition. And when we went, we were like a pretty experienced team, but I was a rookie on that team, so I can't say that for myself. And when we went there, we were competing against other university teams. Like the results didn't matter for us. Obviously, like representing Team Canada, I think almost all of us on that team were rookies to Team Canada. And we just wanted to go and show the world that like Canada can keep up with the collegiate cheer program, because normally when you think of cheerleading, you think of the US, and we're like their small neighbors that are 20 years behind. But for me personally, it was an exciting competition to go to because my family's history with the host city. We competed in Łódź, and I have family that's obviously moved from Poland and lived in Łódź ghetto. So it was exciting to be a Canadian Jew with Polish heritage competing in a city that we weren't welcome in before.
So that's really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about that, as both representing Canada, but representing Canada in a place where sort of your family has history. Not a family, but obviously a ton of Jewish history in Poland, you know, from the Holocaust, and then now as the community is sort of rebuilding. And before, what was that like as sort of an international Jewish athlete on both a athletic and historical mission?
So it's kind of hard. Like for that week, I was for sure living a double life, like trying to figure out how to balance being Peri the athlete who's in Poland on a business trip, because that's what we all call them, versus Peri the Jewish Canadian who's here being the only Jew in her party of 28 with the team and support staff. And it's very hard to switch between the two and being able to experience both authentically. So I found myself like not really being able to buy into either fully until the end of the week that we were in Poland. But I'm very grateful that I was able to before we had gone home.
When you were there with your team, did you have the opportunity to visit any Jewish historical sites? Or, I mean, obviously, tragically, one of the things to visit there is concentration camps that are nearby. And I know that's something people do often when they go on March of the Living or other trips. Did you have any opportunities in that regard?
Yeah, so our coaches actually just tried to keep us busy rather than looking at like specific attractions. So the first 5 days that we were there, we were looking a lot of street art. Because the way Łódź has rebranded itself is now like a very hip university town covered in graffiti. It's very beautiful. And we actually weren't able to know if we got a booked spot, as weird as that sounds, to go visit Auschwitz and Birkenau until the night after our prelim day. So we'd finished competing the finals, got back to our hotel room, and our coach said, everyone dress respectfully tomorrow. We're leaving at 4 a.m. And Jewish Paris thinks that I know what that means. So I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to try to go to sleep and process this in 4 hours so that I don't sleep and literally wake up in a concentration camp. Like that's terrifying.
Sure.
This is something maybe I don't mean to sound insensitive to anybody listening, and I don't think it is, but I always thought Auschwitz was a place you could just sort of go to.
Like I would have thought that too. But
yeah.
No, there's tickets to get in, and there's tour guides, and there's slots. And again, like I only learned about this after the trip because you don't talk about it when you're there for sport. But we didn't know if our team was going to be able to get in until one of the American coaches says, we got a great slot team, Canada. You should try coming with us, or you should try the hour after us. So it was a little impromptu, but I'm glad we were able to go, even though it was a lot of unpacking when we were there and when we got back.
Did you feel like your teammates got a lot out of it? I mean, obviously as a Jew, I'm sure there's a singular connection there, but for your non-Jewish teammates, did they get something out of the visit as well?
I would think so, but it's hard for me to talk on their experiences because
Sure.
I can only see it through the lens of a Jewish kid with family who's been there. I'm glad that we got to go as a group. Like when you go as a Jewish 20 something, you obviously like you imagine yourself going with a March of the Living group, or you imagine with some sort of Jewish tour group. And it was interesting for me to go with people who I like, honest to goodness, considered my family, but not in a Jewish light.
Sure.
It also felt it felt weird to go and
No, it's okay. I think I speak for myself and a lot of our audience where we think of gymnastics as being a sport with a lot of Jewish connections. Through the Soviet era, and Bela Karolyi and then eventually to, your modern Ali Reismans and so on and so forth. But I'm sort of unfamiliar with if there's any Jewish history in competitive cheer. Like, are you it globally these days, or are there any sort of elder Jewish people that you can talk about or look up to, or any history of it?
I mean, I'm relatively new to cheer because I only started 4 years ago. And cheer is very new as a standardized sport.
Right.
So the only other Jews who I know that are at this level are also in Ontario universities.
Oh, cool.
But because the way the level system is set up, when I competed at Brock, I was at the top level. So I mean, like, I'm not going to call myself one of the top Jews in cheerleading, but as far as the level system is concerned, like someone else could look at my stats and say, that's a Jew who was on Team Canada.
Well, first of all, I think we could be the judges of that, Peri. We're happy to call you one of the top Jews in cheerleading. We're not doing necessarily all the research in it, but we're pretty sure here. So congratulations.
Yes, it's true. Something, obviously, as you said, you can see your name up there. Something we've heard from a lot of Jewish athletes we've spoken to is that, when they were kids, just seeing a Jewish name interested in any of the sports they were into is really powerful and inspiring. So for you to bring that up yourself, it seems you get it, which is very refreshing and nice to hear because you're part of it.
Oh, I totally get it, because I was the 13-year-old watching Ali Reisman in London, watching her have a Nagila routine, being like,
Sure.
I want that. Different sport, but I hope for the similar outcome where someone sees me and decides to stick with cheerleading.
So now that you've graduated from Brock, is there more cheerleading in your future? Is there something you're able to do to continue to be involved in it? Are we going to see you in LA in 2028? Maybe
that was my next question.
If there's cheerleading in my future, it would be through a master's program at Brock, just because I love the team's culture so much. And again, like ending on a COVID year, I feel like I still have more to contribute. It's just I want the timing to be right, and I have to be back and be a student.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about how late it is to be sort of standardized internationally. I mean, some sports are so they've been there's been World Cup circuits for years and years and years. So it's interesting with cheer's emergence as a sort of sport that it's starting to get standardized and to be at the Olympics in such a short amount of time. I mean, I feel like really competitive cheerleading in the way that we think of it now is probably only 20, 30 years old in its organized nature, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting also to see it like while being inside the sport, because every time my team has done something, like it's not something that's so like abstract being an athlete doing it, but when you look on paper and realize that our team has done something for the first time in Canada or in the world every year we've been together, it's pretty amazing. And I'm excited for 10, 15 years from now when other people start to look back at the books and see how often Brock shows up just on that same paper.
I think it's sort of interesting to think about the future of the sport as one, that's growing, and there seems like such a big opportunity to be part of it. Would you consider sticking around to coach or contribute in some other way than flying? Is that the correct verb?
Yeah, that's the word. I honestly don't think being an athlete through to 2028 is likely for me just because of the wear it takes on your body.
Sure.
But I would love to be involved. I think the sport needs, as many people who have been through it as an athlete to sort of carry it through as staff as it goes through its first decade of being standardized at the Olympic level.
Just one last question I had before we wrapped up. I know at the beginning we were talking about the number of people in a pyramid that you've been in. Do you know what's the highest you've ever been tossed in the air as a flyer, either in practice or in a routine?
Question.
Is there a limit?
You talk about like lateral distance traveled.
Oh, the less the better for lateral distance.
Oh, really interesting.
You want people under you to throw you up and know exactly where you're going to be when they catch you. And the easiest way is just to not move.
So it's sort of like the equivalent of a minimal splash in diving,
Yeah, kind of.
But what's the highest people tend to get thrown, or that you've been thrown up in the air?
I don't know while I'm in the air, but normally you clear 15 feet.
Wow.
because
Wow.
the base is underneath you and your third or your back spot has to get their arms all the way above their head and jump a little bit before you start to flip. So you're clearing at least 9 feet just to get the skill around, even
Wow.
if you're not doing it properly.
And at the same time that you're being thrown in the air, you're also doing some sort of aerial maneuver as well, right?
Yeah, usually you're back flipping.
So were you the kid at school who could do a flip?
I was do a flip kid until I
Yeah.
went to university. And I probably wouldn't have grown out of it as like at that age, except for I had an injury that I couldn't be do a flip kid during Frosh Week either. Like that was my identity through and through.
Every
Yeah, I've
do a
always-
flip kid there's an age limit on being the do a flip kid. You know,
Yeah,
that's naturally
but
imposed by gravity and physics.
I think for about 10
got my
minutes, I
good-
fantasized about being the do a flip adult. But that's not, it was a dream that died really, really quickly.
It gets less fun the older you are because the morning after your back is just not with you. Like, I feel like there's a reason we stopped seeing do a flip kid once they're no longer a kid.
It's great.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. Well, we wish you the best of luck, in your future, and the best of luck to the sport of cheer as it continues. And we really appreciate you coming on the show and talk about this. Before we wrap up, is there any other story or plug you'd like to share while being on the show? Something. Thank you for your time. You have the floor for a couple of minutes. If there's anything we didn't get to, go nuts.
I feel like I should plug Lost Tribe Esports.
Oh, sure.
They're a new division for Lost Tribe Athletics. Just kind of part of that group now in its first year of having athlete representatives. So Lost Tribe Esports.
They're
Our
great
old
friends of
friends.
the pods.
Yeah.
Friends of the pod. We're happy to support them in any way, shape, or form we can.
We think of them as the other people in Jewish sports media.
I'm happy to be friends with both now. That's an amazing plug. If I can say them and you say yes, also that's a great idea. I'm happy to have that as my plug.
That's great.
Totally.
Well, thanks again, Peri. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been great having you as a guest.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you to Peri for regaling us with tales of flips, turns, twists, and her history sort of from the flip kid to taking a group to Poland and to one of the top teams in the world.
Yeah, really great interview. And, shout out to Lost Tribe Esports, which is, doing some great work sponsoring Jewish athletes all over North America.
As a big part
as
of it.
always, you can find our work at the Canadian Jewish News. You can read the Canadian Jewish News at the CJN.ca. Join in the conversation on Facebook at the CJN Lounge. You can get this podcast wherever you're currently listening to it. If you're on the web browser, find a podcast app and download us right onto your phone. You can take us with you wherever you go.
I'd like to end this week with a story. I promised my wife I would recognize a joke she made while watching baseball the other night. Did you hear about the time that a member of the Red Sox accidentally walked onto the team bus of the White Sox?
No.
All of their jerseys came out pink. Thank you and good night, everybody.